Welcome to another Train Sim Classic video, and this time we're going back in time to when Virgin Trains ruled the roost on the West Coast Main Line for an early morning trip from Birmingham New Street on a Glasgow Central service, and we'll take this Pendolino as far as Preston. Wolverhampton, Stafford, Crewe, Warrington Bank Quay, Wigan Northwestern and Preston. And hello, welcome to Birmingham New Street. And we are going to take the 0530, well, Birmingham New Street to Glasgow Central it says, but we'll be taking it as far as Preston, and as it says, after the train arrived empty from Oxley Depot, it's now ready to work the 0530 departure to Glasgow Central, of which you'll be driving to Preston. For the passengers here at Birmingham New Street, prepare the train for departure and press F1 for your service information. Let's just have a quick look at the front. Just seems so right somehow. Virgin Pendolino, and it took me a long time actually to get used to the idea that they were in Avanti colours. I kind of quite like the livery now, but this was how they were, how it feels as though they should be. So let's get things set up. Doors open as well. So many warning systems on this thing, it's untrue. So we talked about having a look at the briefing. So we are set way back in 2008. Your maximum speed 125 miles an hour. Please disregard the aspect showing signal NS 216. Make sure your destination display shows Glasgow Central. You may have to tab the signal CE 553. So, yeah, okay, we'll take note of some of that anyway. Might be a old version of the route, or not the very latest version perhaps that I've got, as to why that signal didn't clear. But you do get the odd bulky things with train sim sometimes. Not sure whether we should be sounding the horn this early in the morning. Really is a tortuous early progress out of New Street. You're just kind of praying to get to that 40-mile-an-hour point. But this was a scenario, it was one of those that the moment I saw it, I thought, yep, that's what I fancy doing. Be good if there was a part 2 as well to complete this run from Preston to Glasgow, and maybe if there's enough people interested in this particular run and this video, then I'll perhaps create something and just modify the early morning vibes about this. As we have the canals nearby. Often said, and I believe it's true, that there are more canals in and around Birmingham than there are in Venice. That was a Thunderbird class 57, I think. So we go past Soho Depot. Wolverhampton, the first stop. I mean, this wasn't a pro enhancement pack, this sound pack from Armstrong Powerhouse. It didn't have all quite the bells and whistles, but I think sound-wise they've got it pretty much spot on. Teach me to fiddle about with the buttons, won't it? Don't need the windscreen wipers. This is Smethwick Golden Bridge. Shouldn't imagine there'll be a massive amount of traffic around this time of the morning. Lovely time of the day to be travelling about on the train, actually, when you're kind of up with the lark and you have a nice quiet train. Whole sequence of stations between Wolverhampton and Birmingham New Street. And until you start to drive it on Train Simulator, or in real life I guess as well, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, you don't quite realise what a roller coaster ride it is as well. It's very undulating, quite slow as well. But it's an interesting section nevertheless. It would have been quite exciting when we've kind of first had this available, and the fact that it could actually tilt in Train Sim. It's never been the fastest actually, in terms of it's a little bit of a frame rate killer. Quite demanding on the game. We've kind of got a section here at 75 miles an hour, then we drop down to 60 again, then it's 75. So once we get kind of clear of this Black Country section and we go forward from Wolverhampton, then it starts to get a bit fast as we go towards Penkridge. This is Dudleyport. Tipton. I have to kind of think about it. I'm more familiar with the idea of the stations going from Wolverhampton towards Birmingham New Street. Well, that was the old Tess just saying we were a bit too slow there, actually, responding. Yeah, I think I was doing all right. I think I would have slowed down to 60. I didn't need the reminder. Neutral section here. Then we got Cosley. We're not too far away from Wolverhampton now. Amazing amount of old buildings and old kind of workshops, warehouses, foundries, all sorts of stuff. And still we've got the canal wandering alongside us. It's probably not as pretty as Venice, but it's certainly a huge canal network. We will have to get down to that 30 again, otherwise we'll get another little task reminder. There is the Morpeth board to tell us that we do have that 30 coming up. And this is very much the slowest section of the route, really, because we will pick up speed after Wolverhampton. I mean, we've got that 15 miles an hour into the station. We go around that incredibly tight curve, and of course it's all on viaducts. We are going to pick up our early bird passengers, if you like, into platform 1 at Wolverhampton. Because it's not been 100% confirmed yet, we've got the announcement as I'm recording this video in just over a week's time about what's coming up in Trainsim World, and the hope is, and there seems to be, well, there was a bit of a leak a couple of weeks back, that we are going to get a Pendolino and hopefully a run from London Euston, possibly to Milton Keynes. I mean, much as I love Trainsim Classic, it's just great with Trainsim World that you've got a 24-hour timetable and it loads up just a lot faster as well. Can actually hear the doors open there. I don't know whether they're just open further back. No. Not sure why that is. I think it's a funny little station actually in terms of your positioning and where you stop at exactly. Well, despite the slightly late start out of New Street, we have got a tick, which is always good news. Got a bit cloudy. Got a bit black over Bill's mother, as they say in this part of the world, and I didn't know it for years, but the bill was referring to William Shakespeare. In other words, you were saying it was black heading towards the Stratford-upon-Avon area. So we haven't actually checked where we're stopping at on this route, rather remiss of us, but we are stopping next at Stafford, then Crewe, Warrington Bank Quay, Wigan North Western, and then arrival into Preston. It's going a bit brighter. And I think that line over to the left does take you to Oxley carriage sidings, and also the route to Shrewsbury. And you can get direct trains along the Cambrian coast to Aberystwyth and Pwllheli from Birmingham New Street. They do take that section. That'll be a good little bit to have, wouldn't it? That bit to connect you into Shrewsbury. So we can finally get a little bit of speed up, but at the moment still only up to 60 miles an hour. But we have got a 90 coming up, so things are looking a bit more healthy. Then after all that huge number of stations between Wolverhampton and Birmingham New Street, we've only got Penkridge now between here and Stafford. Got a downhill gradient, so we're just watching that we don't tip over the 60 at the moment. Somehow you just feel a Class 390 like this doesn't like the idea of pootling along at 60 miles an hour. It's very much a speed, built for speed. Hard to believe that, you know, we're not that far off from saying they've been in service for 25 years. They still feel like brand new to me. And for the first time coming up as well, we have that 125 mile an hour running as well. Of course, because we are driving the Pendolino, we can use those orange speed markers that you see on the track, which tells us that that is the speed for this sort of high-speed tilting train. We'd have to be going a bit slower if we were doing a 350 service. What platform we have at Crewe, incidentally? What does it say? Crewe platform 11. Oh, it seems to be platform 11. Oh, wonder if there's the odd pathing issue with some of the platforms at Crewe. The thing into cruise control, so it should more or less maintain our speed, hopefully. And that way you don't have to keep on adjusting the throttle and accelerator, if we can call it that, the power controller. Here's Penkridge. I suppose one of the beauties of creating a early morning scenario is that you can kind of make it interesting, but you don't have to worry about absolutely shed loads of AI. So we'll ease off power, and then we'll start thinking about the fact that we have to get down to 95 because it'll come upon us pretty quickly. Let's try to make sure we don't get a damn task thing again. So that's the warning for the fact that we're coming down to 60. You get quite a steady reduction in speed on the approach to Stafford, so you're not quite likely to miss out on the station. Plenty of prior warnings. Not always like that with all stations. We are going to literally come off the Birmingham branch in a moment and join the West Coast Main Line proper. We call it that, coming in from the Trent Valley route from Rugby. The more direct route into London Euston. Very distinctive sounds of the motors on this Class 390. Because this station model was from the Trent Valley route from Dovetail Games, but it's a nice representation of Stafford Station in all its finery. 1960s finery. Just trying to remember, have I not pressing the right button? Hooray. I don't think the buttons work on there anyway, do they? Can't remember what the problem is there. No, that's the look at the inside. Of course, this is how they used to be in the unrefurbished state. To wait here at Stafford. What time are we? Due away 06:05. And just when we thought we got a clearance out of the station, we've stepped up to red. Well, it says we can't go past, so we better not ignore it. Slightly concerning because they're all showing red. Again, it might just be I've just not downloaded some sort of pack. We're back on the yellow again. The signalman is playing games with us. So we kind of have to be careful. I'm not going to go straight up to the 100 because we have that 30 mile an hour. And that's for crossing over the point so that we get onto the down fast line. See, it marks there. That's Doxy Junction. And we'll be on the down fast in a minute. We're pretty fast to Crewe then. So at the moment the whole of the train is through this little section here, then we'll have full clearance to 125 mile an hour. The one thing about the cruise control on this thing is you just can't set it to a certain speed, but you can, once you achieve that speed that you're looking for, you can get it to hold it in that position. It's a notoriously fast section of the West Coast Main Line, particularly when we get through Whitmore. That section then, there's a couple of bends around at Whitmore where the old station used to be in the old Whitmore Troughs. And that was the M6 motorway. I don't know if it's closed or something. There didn't seem to be too much traffic on it this morning. Maybe there was overnight roadworks. But yeah, once we're through Whitmore, we've got a straighty section then through Madeley and into Crewe. And it was kind of that section where back in the days of LMS doing battle with LNER in Steam days, that they used that section as real speed runs to try and get up to the fastest possible speed, and there's that little battle to outdo each other. Of course, we're still here back in the days of Virgin cross country, I think. Though I'd have to double check on that because, of course, Voyagers were used by Virgin on Holyhead to Euston and Chester to Euston services. In fact, yeah, until recently they still have been with Avanti West Coast as well, but we've got the introduction now of the new 805s, the bi-mode trains. This is, well, that was the line at Norton Bridge that deviated away to Stone and towards Stoke, and then it would go on towards Macclesfield. Of course, there's also the route at Kidsgrove. Well, it would carry on through to Kidsgrove and then on to Macclesfield, Manchester Piccadilly. But at Kidsgrove, there's also the line that deviates back towards Crewe as well. And we do have that line represented in this missing link, or what's it called, West Coast, Midlands and North West. You can kind of see why when you're on this section of the West Coast Main Line, and particularly as well when you get north of Preston and you go through the climbs, Shap and Beatock, and there was an awful lot of bends and twists and turns. It's not the straightest of routes overall, and that's why the tilting technology that was developed by British Rail in the early 1980s and then used on the advanced passenger train, which never quite achieved its full potential, but it's certainly useful on this West Coast Main Line. If you know the area, this is around Millmease. And this is Stableford. When we go under this bridge, there used to be a pub called the Cock Inn on the left. You get a decent view of the tilt there. It's a great experience. So this now is Whitmore. I believe there was the old Whitmore Yard, and then round about here, or just before the bridge, I think the old Whitmore station. But we then straighten ourselves out, and we are pretty straight then for the remaining few miles, 10 miles or so to Crewe. And this is Madeley. We got a little glimpse there of a 350. There is a regular service between Liverpool Lime Street and Birmingham New Street, and I think nowadays there are some London North Western trains that actually go from Crewe to London Euston, and they go down this particular section rather than going via Stoke. Now you'll see a big frame drop in the not too distant future because of it loading in the huge extents of Crewe. It's not just the station itself, but all the big yards, Basford Hall yards behind, all the little junctions coming in as well. Quite honestly, it's amazing that the game works at all in this section, really. So we'll have to keep our concentration in the cab, I think, for the moment now, because of the approach to Crewe itself. Certainly looks as though the timetable's fairly generous. You've got something like a 5-minute wait in Crewe itself. No, we saw a 66 in the distance there on a Freightliner working. Again, you perhaps expect this time of the day, 20 past 6 in the morning, before the peak, 1 or 2 freight workings. And there's plenty of freight workings during the day as well, but just a little bit of a leaving up at around peak time. So, okay. Worth just tabbing. It's probably one of those where it's probably got a red but a couple of dots on or something, which indicates that you are kind of good to go. Either that or it's a change to yellow. Well, we know we can go through it because we've asked for permission. Yeah, those 2 dots, and I don't know whether it's entirely authentic and that it should be like that on the main line, but you know that that is effectively clearance. Got the line from Stoke, well, from Kidsgrove and Alsager and Crewe, coming in from the right. It's well worth doing the run. I think there's only one full run that I'm aware of that came with the pack, and I don't think there are too many in the opposite direction that do the full run from Birmingham New Street to Crewe via Stoke. And we take in the magnificence that is Crewe Station. You can see a 350, you can see Pendolino and a London Euston train. And there's something else as well in the northbound platforms as well. I think that might be, is that a 175 on a Transport for Wales, as they are now anyway? Probably. Would it have been a Reaver at the time? No, I think actually they got one of the older first liveries on that one. I think I just spied another Class 57 Thunderbird as well. It's been messing about with the controls, isn't it? Had to reset a couple of things. That was me messing about with some of the controls that we arrived into Crewe. So if you watched the Crewe to Holyhead video with the 805 that I uploaded quite some time ago now, you'll know that we have in the game the route going after Holyhead to our left, Chester and Holyhead. But we are going to carry on along the West Coast main line through to Warrington Bank Quay, Wigan, North Western, and then Preston. There was a brief period in the late 60s and early 70s where this line was only electrified as far as Liverpool Lime Street. So we had Weaver Junction and then through Runcorn to Liverpool Lime Street with electric wires, but then diesel on the section north on this route, going towards Preston and Glasgow, and they used double-headed Class 50s for a while, but from 1974, I think it was, we gained full electrification. I'm kind of reminding myself, I mean, it's a long time since I've done a full run up to Glasgow, but it is quite a nice section to do from Preston through to Glasgow Central. You go through, first of all, through the Lake District, and then also the hills as we come into Scotland. Is it the Lowther Hills, I think, from memory? Yeah, another neutral section. Yeah, I did spy at the corner of my eye there, the white light just going out to show that power was gone momentarily as we went through that neutral section. It's fantastic that that is modelled in the game. So we got about 20 odd miles to go to Warrington Bank Quay. Time flashes by, flies by when we're travelling at these speeds. And even if you've got the fastest car on the road and you're completely breaking the speed limit, you just wouldn't be able to get up to these sort of speeds that you see day in, day out on the train. There were some hopes, I think, when the West Coast Main Line was upgraded around about the time when these Pendolinos were first introduced. There was a massive upgrade to the West Coast Main Line, and I know rugby was one area that they completely replaced. A lot of work went on at rugby, but the original plan, I think, was to try and get above 125 mile an hour, but eventually they decided it was costing too much and they would shelve their plans on that, so we were stuck with 125, which was an upgrade on the 110 that used to exist. Solitary light engine 66. Not 100% sure if that's because there's some freight wagons that I've not downloaded or whether it was a light engine working. You do see them. Not unusual. It annoys me when it says speeding, but we're actually not. We're doing 125. little oddity there. I mean, a couple of the stations, you've got Winsford and Hertford, but you've kind of got a 4-track main line, and then you come to the stations and you go down to the double track. That was a nice little advert as well. That I think it's still knocking around on YouTube at the very end of Virgin Trains, and Richard Branson appears in it, and Mr. Blobby as well, of all things, and they talk about having the time of their lives, and it was almost brings a tear to the eye actually watching it. I'm not going to massively get into politics and all the rest of it, but you know, some will say the days of Virgin Trains and Virgin West Coast were a lot better than the current running of Avanti West Coast, and arguably a damn sight cheaper as well. Well, we won't dwell on that too much. Doesn't cost anything on Trade Sim. Well, cost to buy all the routes and the content. Don't think it's going to be one of those days where it gets absolutely sunny. Hope again you're enjoying this run. So I think this is Weaver Junction coming up, so if we were heading up to our left, and then we would be going towards Runcorn and Liverpool Lime Street. And of course there is a flyover going over so that it doesn't cause too much of a obstruction. And then we're now on the line which goes through to Preston and then eventually Carlisle, Glasgow. The observant people will know exactly where all the neutral sections are, and apologies, I'm sure I've missed loads of them. I'll try and spot them where I can. I'm not totally convinced. I don't know if I had the very latest Armstrong Powerhouse weather pack. I'm a couple behind on that. Certainly haven't got the cloud pack, but if I got the latest weather enhancement pack, you might even get rain on this scenario. But personally, I always think if you don't get rain, it's a blessing, really. Not a massive fan of driving in the rain. We are only a couple of miles away to Warrington Bank Quay. In the line on the right, just diverging away to the yard at the back of the station. I always find it fascinating that when you're coming into stations that you're just not signalled into the platform, so you know, you're not going to get a cautionary signal, but it's kind of route knowledge. You know, the driver knows exactly where the station is, so that in itself isn't an issue. They know at all points in the journey exactly where they are, and you listen to any videos where they're describing it, it's a fascinating listen. Coming towards Warrington Bank Quay. And we do have another service going southbound. This looks like a Voyager. That's got to be a cross-country train, surely. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly when cross-country became a thing and Virgin didn't control the cross-country trains. That's probably something like, well, Glasgow to the southwest, or maybe even Edinburgh. We'll perhaps be able to have a check in a second. Hoping it might have its destination board on, but maybe not. There you go. Well, Preston to Birmingham, it says. So there's nothing wrong with the doors because they open that time. And if we do get London Euston to Milton Keynes and the Train Sim World 5, we're assuming it's going to be Train Sim World 5. What do you think about that? Well, personally speaking, I'd love it to be longer. I mean, I'd love it to be London Euston to Birmingham, or even to Northampton or to Rugby, or just try and have a few variations. But even if it's to Milton Keynes, it's a decent stopping run with the 350. You'll have a fast stretch of the legs, and it's an interesting section out of Euston. There's freight workings from Wembley and Willesden, and hopefully the DC lines as well with the Aventura. So there's plenty of interest in that, personally speaking. Of course, we don't even know yet. It's just speculation at the moment. It might turn out to be Birmingham to Milton Keynes or something. I've experienced that lag before on this section of the line. Maybe I need to just re-download it or something, but it's funny, isn't it? We went through Crewe without any botherment at all, but then we get a lag here, and I'm sure there'll be another one before we get to Preston as well. First time it happened, I thought it's going to crash on me, it's going to dump the game, but I was kind of chilled out about that. I thought we might be all right. The one thing I'm quite sure about with that speed control is that you don't use it in terms of the brakes. You just control the brakes as you would do normally. And that's particularly appropriate when you have one that you can reduce to a set speed on. Well, caught Tass out there, didn't I? I was a bit too slow getting down to the 80, but I didn't notice. Fairly short section between Warrington Bank Quay and Wigan North Western. There we go. I saw the neutral section markings there. I just saw the white disappearing of the power line. There we are, we're back in again now. It caught me at that time, didn't it? I think possibly I need to re-download the enhancement pack or a patch for the signals in a couple of places. There's a lot to keep up with to try and keep Train Simulator up to date. And you kind of have to remind yourself you really are an early bird if you're on this service, because we're still not even reached 7 o'clock. Yeah, just to stress again just about those signals, it's nothing to do with the route, it's just a patch that I've not downloaded. Nothing to worry about. There's very much been some tremendous efforts to get so much out of the game, far more than was ever foreseen by the builders. I mean, it was Crewe originally, then Dovetail Games obviously picked it up. We are coming into Wigan North Western. Of course, there's 2 stations here. We have Wigan Wallgate as well, which is just over the road from the station. And you can get trains in towards Manchester Victoria via Bolton and Atherton as well. I only know that recently. You've done it in real life. It was on one of those class, well, it used to be a 319, but they've been converted into sort of a bi-mode type of thing, and it broke down on me. Now, I've had a go on the backdated line recently, which includes the Atherton line to Manchester, and that's got Wigan Wallgate represented. In fact, you can do a run from there. I don't know whether Wallgate is on here or not. But it's a nice custom model of the building. I hope very much by the time I've uploaded this video that I have remembered to edit it, because some of the station stops, it's an absolute age to be waiting. Again, I presume this is representative of the timetable. Maybe there's a bit of stock I'm missing, and perhaps we should have been held up in places, but there was a very, very long wait there at Wigan North Western. It's worth control, forgot what it's called now, control sync keys, to try and speed things up with control shift and 4. But even then it was a long wait. Async keys, that's what I'm trying to think of. That's what it's called. So we are on the final stretch now, the last 15 miles to Preston. Remember that old video 125 cab ride from London Euston to Glasgow Central, Royal Scot, and that actually went non-stop from London Euston to Preston. I don't know whether that service runs now. I don't think it does. You get quite a variation in stopping patterns on services between Euston and Crewe in many ways, but beyond that it tends to be fairly consistent, and they nearly all stop these stations on the way to Preston. I don't think you get hardly any that wouldn't stop at Warrington Bank Quay and Wigan. Though oddly, I think there's the odd ones that don't stop at Crewe nowadays. Gain a chance to stretch the legs and get up to full line speed. So for now we'll assume another driver is going to take this over at Preston and take things on towards Glasgow Central. I mean, in real life, I think there's very often a driver changeover at Preston. But if you would like me to consider uploading a version 2 of this and take the full run up to Glasgow, then I'll certainly give that some thought. Interesting here, you've got two main running tracks, and very, very clearly you can see that there were two more on the other side. And when we get to Preston, we will see the updated version of Preston Station, the new model that was incorporated with this route, this missing link, or West Coast Main Line, Midlands and North West. Because the original one that came with West Coast Main Line over Shap by Dovetail Games was just a kit bash job. So it's great to have a proper Preston. I'm not quite as familiar with the stations around this section. I know you had the Euxton, Belshaw Lane and Leyland possibly as well. We are on the approach to Preston. As you can see, just about 3 miles away now. It's not been the busiest in terms of traffic, but then remembering it is 07:12 in the morning, and I think that's sometimes a deliberate ploy by scenario creators, just so that it'll definitely run, because it's all very well and good uploading a rush hour service, but then nobody can run it on their computers, then there's kind of not much point. I think sometimes these Morpeth boards with the speed restrictions, it seems to just vary quite a bit how early or late you get the advance warning. Sometimes it's kind of far too early, and you wouldn't want to be putting on harsh braking quite so soon. But then you also have to be kind of mindful as well. You don't dally too much, and you don't sort of think, got plenty of time to get down, and then you end up speeding as you come towards the speed limit. Always love this section just before Preston Station. So we've got single yellow, but we have the number 3 board above it, so we have got clearance right into the platform. So again, if you've enjoyed watching it, thanks very much for watching the video. I've certainly enjoyed this run, and it's a little bit of a journey back in time to the days of Virgin livery Pendolinos. This is the fabulous Preston Station, represented in all its glory. So if you have enjoyed watching it, then if you like and subscribe, I'd be tremendously grateful. And if you've got any thoughts as well on the sort of runs you would like to see, then let me know in the comments. Always interested to hear people's comments, whether you know the line, whether you don't know the line. So there we are. That was a journey from Birmingham New Street through to Preston. I'm Power Flower, and until next time, it's goodbye. Thanks for watching.